If this is your first time listening, welcome. This podcast is all about honest conversations with incredible people who remind us that life after 50 isn't slowing down. It's about discovering what is possible. We talk about reinvention, relationships, health, purpose, career, motherhood, and everything in between. Because I truly believe our greatest chapter can still be ahead of us. Before we jump in, if you're enjoying this podcast, please hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if today's conversation makes you think of a friend, share it with her. My hope is that these stories reach every woman who needs a little inspiration, encouragement, or simply a reminder that she's not alone. Enjoy. Amber Hollingsworth, you're here to talk about a very important subject. We're going to talk about addiction today. You have done incredible work. You've probably had 20 years of working in the addiction space.
I have. It's been a long time. It
Wow.
makes me feel old.
I know it's crazy because it doesn't, 20 years, as I've just realized, goes by in a flash.
I know.
What made you get into addiction work in the first place?
That's a funny question, Deborah, because people always want to know that. Because most people in the field that I'm in, they get into it for very personal reason. Usually it's because they're in recovery, right? And they decide to get into it. I fell into it on accident. Sometimes we just land where we're supposed to land, right?
Yeah.
I'm not in substance abuse recovery myself.
Mhm.
I do come from an addicted family, hardcore, like everyone in my family, like siblings, parents, cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents, everywhere. And a lot of people say, oh, that's why you got in the field. And I'm like, not really, because I didn't realize it until I was in the field. Not that I didn't realize people were doing substances in my family, but I wouldn't label addiction on it because when you grow up in it, it's just your normal.
Right.
Right. I do think that's probably why I'm comfortable here and why I stayed, because it's just I'm just used to it. Right.
I did a lot of work on a show called The Golden Bachelor, which was people trying to find love over 60.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of women and men, as we were interviewing them and trying to decide if they're going to be on the show, how many of them had a breakdown in their marriage because of alcoholism or substance abuse. But it was so prevalent for so long, and they didn't actually realize that it was at the level that it was at until it was too late. And I found that really fascinating to think about the fact that you can live with addiction and it become a normal part of your life.
Especially with drinking, because it's just so culturally acceptable, and you don't think that much about it. And I can definitely relate to what you're saying as far as meeting a lot of people, coming out of relationships where there was alcoholism particularly, because I've seen everything over the course of 20 years. I've done a little bit of it all, but these days I sort of specialize in businessmen who drink too much is the way I would say it. They're highly functional alcoholics, and very successful in a lot of ways. And when you're living with someone who, they go to work every day, maybe they make a lot of money, maybe they run marathons, maybe, they do.
Right.
President of the PTA or whatever, they're very functional, but that they're drinking too much, but you can't consolidate that in your mind as alcoholism, right? Because it's no, they are alcoholic. They couldn't get all this stuff done, but that's not actually true, right? Because people function for a long time.
Just because you're achieving in life, earning good money, running a marathon doesn't mean that could preclude that. I had a friend that was married to somebody, and she did not realize that he had a substance abuse problem for the entire relationship until it got so bad. And that's when she became aware of it. And the shame that she felt that she did not follow any of the clues, it was so heavy for her. Talked about how you can sort of look for signs or see things or clues.
Yeah, great question. Just from curiosity's sake, I'm going to answer your question, but was your friend, was that alcohol related or opiate related?
No, it was opiate.
I knew you were going to say that.
Really?
Tell your friend, if you want to, you heard it from me.
I will.
People go for years completely undetected with opioids because you don't look intoxicated. You don't smell funny, right? You don't,
right.
And you actually function better for a lot of the years because, a lot of people have used opiates so they can work 16-hour days, like nurses and physicians.
When you say opiate, just so I understand, what does that cover?
That would include pain pills, heroin, fentanyl. And then there are these sort of they're not considered opioids, but these little subsets like kratom. which is something that you can actually buy legally, but
I
has
just
a very
heard about that,
opioid-like
and it
effect.
blew my mind that you can get that at a gas station. That's crazy.
It is crazy. I've had a lot of people bring themselves to me to get help for being hooked on it, because you build tolerance to it very quickly.
Wow.
So to answer your question, which was what are signs, it's a little different depending on the substance, but like opioids, for example, the place you're going to see that first is money. You're not going to see it in how the person's acting or, that they're being funny or whatever. You're going to see it in money, and you're going to see it in inconsistency. Like they'll be really great one day and then they're sick, and then they're really great and then they miss work. They're like, you can't decide if they're employee of the month or you want to fire them. It's like, they're sort of all over the board like that. And that's because of the up and down of the opioid. With alcohol, the signs that you're going to see is not so much that they have to drink or even that they drink every day, like the early signs. It's more that they have trouble stopping once they start. So it's like they intend to only, they'll make promises to themselves and to you. I'm only going to, have a couple with my friends and I'll be home. And it just, not every time, but like a lot of times, it goes way past what they even wanted it to go. And then there's a lot of like promises and regrets and remorse and all these attempts to manage it and not do that again. And then it happens again. Those are some of the earlier signs that you're dealing with an alcohol.
The name of your site that you have is Put the Shovel Down.
Yeah, that's my YouTube channel. Yeah.
Can you explain to me what that means?
It's an old recovery saying, and it means you hit your bottom when you put your shovel down. And to me, it means you can decide when you're done. Like, you don't have to burn every bridge. You don't have to hit this crazy bottom and lose everything. You can say, you know what? I've suffered enough. I've gone down far enough. Like, let's just put the shovel down and move forward, right? Because it is my goal to try to help some of these people that are still in the functional range to step out of it before they look like the stereotype, before they lose their jobs and their relationships and their kids, because it goes on for years and years and years before people get to that point.
It's an interesting part of your work too is, when you think about addiction, you think about the person that has the addiction and the problems that they're suffering and how to help them. But I feel like you're coming from the lens of the people that are supporting them and are a part of that struggle, right? Even if you're trying to help somebody, you too are getting dragged into this really deep water and not knowing how to navigate it.
Well, in my work, I have worked with the person who has the addiction. I spent, all these years doing that. And most of the people that have come to see me over all these years, like 90-something%, have come in not wanting to see me, reluctant, maybe leveraged in, maybe legally forced in. And so I've got all of this experience, like pretty much everybody I've ever worked with, of dealing with people who were either in denial or didn't want help or knew they had a problem but didn't think it was bad enough to have to go talk to someone, that kind of thing. So I've got a real understanding about the psychological mechanisms that go on, like how they think for people who have addiction and how to actually get through to them. So a lot of my content is helping family members understand how to actually approach this situation, because pretty much everything everyone does is the exact opposite. And even all the things that the people around you are going to tell you to do, I would tell you, don't do that. Right? I'm telling you, do not do that. That is going to blow up in your face. And let me tell you exactly what's going to happen. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, Amber, that is exactly what happened. I'm like, yeah, that's what's going to happen.
So what are some of those pieces? Is this the classic like intervention scene that you see in a movie that you should not be doing?
Well, okay, that's a really great question. When you have an intervention, like I call that an old school intervention, it's actually called like a Johnson model intervention. And I'm not against those type of interventions, but I'll say this. If you're dealing with someone who, like, they're really far in addiction, they know they have an addiction, they just can't stop, like you see on the show, like it is just out of control. It's not even a question, right? Like that kind of intervention can work well because sometimes you have to push someone into making a change. You have to get someone sober for their brain to even work enough for them to decide to get sober. So I'm okay with pushing someone into treatment at that point, or even like when the legal system pushes someone into treatment. But if you're dealing with someone that's functional and you're trying to have this big giant intervention like you see on the TV, it's not going to work out the way you want, because even if you sort of pressure this person into going to treatment, in their mind, if they don't have a problem, they're going to come back out and continue to do it.
Right.
So timing is really important. So that's that kind of intervention. But years before that, I mean, for long before we ever even get to that, because that's like last ditch effort, right? When we do that, you're trying to get this person who you love and you care about. And it's like watching someone run in front of a train, right? This person that you love the most in the world. And so naturally your instinct is to want to, grab them by the shoulders and say, what the heck are you doing? You're screwing up your life, screwing up my life. You're messing up the kids, And when you come at someone directly like that, even if there's a part of them that knows they're in the wrong, when you directly confront someone like that, they're going to be defensive. And when they get defensive, it's just a human instinct. And when they get defensive, they're going to minimize it. They're going to gaslight you. They're going to tell you, you think everyone's an alcoholic because your daddy was an alcoholic, and now you just put that on everyone else. And not only is that frustrating for you as the family member, but as you're getting that person to think that thought and say those things, they're convincing themselves even further that it's not a problem. And they'll ruminate on that for days after the incident. And in their head, it's like, I can't believe she said that to me, or he did that, and they don't know what they're talking about, and everyone drinks and they're making a big deal about it and saying all these things.
And also sending that person into their own wounding, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%. Exactly.
Yeah.
And now they'll hang on to that. They'll ruminate on it. And so it's making the denial worse. Not like you're making someone be an addict or an alcoholic, but you can be helping them stay in denial, because in the mind of someone who has an addiction, it kind of like the food that fuels addiction is resentment and self-pity. Right. And when you call that person out or try to get that person's attention, even if you're trying to do it in a loving way, it does not feel good. And that gives them all the reason in the world to resent you about it, feel sorry for themselves about it. And that perpetuates the addiction. And then you become what I call the villain in the story. Like you're the bad guy as the family member. Right. And that sucks so much, because you're just trying to help this person. You love them. You're probably holding up most, if not all, of their responsibilities. So you're like, are you kidding me? I'm keeping your life going. Like, what the heck? And you think I'm the bad guy? And it just becomes this huge power struggle that goes on forever between the family member and the person with the addiction. And that's a lot of what I try to undo.
How do you even start that process?
Well, with the family member, I think you got to recognize that you are being sucked into that bad guy role. I call it like fish hooked. It's like they're going to throw a fish hook and you're going to bite it, right? Because the person with an addiction will start an argument with you so that they can leave and be mad and storm out the door and go do whatever they're going to do,
Right.
And it's hard even when you're trying not to be in the villain role. You've already been there in their mind and they want to keep you there because it's how they justify their decisions. You got to recognize, what am I doing that's pulling me into that, right? And the way you get through to someone is a process. I call it building credibility with the person, which is kind of like building credit, like your credit score. And in one of our programs, we actually teach people how to put numbers on it and track. Like if someone says this or that or the other, or you say you get this many points. If this gets said, you lose this many points. And I'm like, it's like trying to find a house. Don't even apply. Don't even have an opinion about anything unless you got at least 700, because you wasted your time. You do not have the credit, because no one's going to listen to you. Here's the thing. People aren't going to listen to you unless they think and really feel in their heart that you really get them. Not that you love them. They know you love them. You know what? We know our grandmama loves us, but we're probably not going to take our advice if we don't think she gets us. So this thing that you're doing is you're staying out of the villain role. You're building credibility with the person, which is seeing things through their lens and articulating that back to them and having empathy statements when they're suffering. This allows them to actually see the problem sooner, because empathy triggers the learning part of our brain instead of confrontation triggers the defensive part of our brain. So you're allowing them to see it for what it is, and you're becoming like this trusted source. This is what counselors do, right? We become this trusted source. So that's what I do for all these years, right? I align with this person who didn't want to see me to begin with. I win them over pretty quickly, and then I'm on their side, and then I just wait until they make a mess, and trust me, they will, because that's addiction. And then I say, oh my gosh, we got to get you out of this. I think you should do this and this and this. And they're like, oh my God, thank you, Amber, you saved me. And if I would have just said, I think you need to do this and this and this right out the gate.
Right. You would have lost
You don't
the
know
right
me
away.
to
That's
speak
fascinating.
and have advice and
Patience.
opinion.
Patience. What sort of addiction issues are people sort of struggling with now that are maybe different than it was in the past, or new things that people may not be aware of?
There are trends, and sometimes there are trends like regionally, and then like there are times, like in the 80s, it was all about the cocaine. I mean, people still use cocaine now, but there are these trends, right? So I think the thing that I see so much of now, I see personally a lot of alcoholism, either in, like I said, highly functional men or highly functional women who run their households and who take care of kids. It's like that wine time is like the mommy time, right? So, and women, they over sacrifice so much and they do all this caretaking and they don't take care of themselves. And it's like the one thing that they feel like they do for them. It's like, okay, I've done all the things for everyone else. This is my glass of wine. This is my time to have a drink. And then that gets sort of culturally reinforced too, because you meet up with your other mom friends and that's what y'all do together. And then it becomes like this inside joke,
Right.
So I see a lot of either side of that. But the thing I think that's probably the most different over the course of the years that I've been doing this is marijuana addiction.
It's interesting because I think that's a substance that people don't consider addictive.
Right.
Weirdly. I mean, and now too that it's legal, like, if you're driving to work in the morning, every single car that is around you, you can see the plumes of smoke coming out of the car.
Right. Early in my career, before I think it was legal in Colorado, like only at the time, sure, but it's still not legal here where I am. And people would always say, oh, weed, it's not addictive. You can't be addicted to it, which is not true. And I actually don't hear that hardly ever anymore, that thing about it not being addictive, because now that it is legal everywhere and like you can have it in the vape pens, people are smoking weed all day, every day, like people used to smoke cigarettes.
Right.
I mean, wake up to bedtime all day long, right?
Yeah.
And so I think people know. I just think it's very hard to treat. I say it's the hardest addiction that I treat. And the reason is not because it's like the hardest thing to quit.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing to get people to see that is what is causing their problems.
Interesting.
Hardest thing to motivate people, because
is that because the highs and lows are more even, if you will?
Sort of. It's because the consequences happen over such a long period of time. It's so gradual that it starts to change you, and life's, you just feel crappy. Your anxiety's worse. You're not as productive. All these things that happen over like a long time that you don't connect it to the weed. Like if you go out and you do cocaine and you spend, $1,000 on a weekend, you're like, holy crap, this is a problem.
Right.
If you're drinking and you go out and make a fool of yourself, a few weekends in a row, you're like, holy crap, this is a problem.
Right.
But with marijuana, it gets you very slowly. And you don't recognize, you're miserable, you're unhappy, but you don't recognize truly the majority of the reason why your life is sucky right now and you hate your life is because of the marijuana. The way I describe it is just like when you're a kid and you're in the ocean playing, right? And you see your parents up on the beach and you're like, hey, mom, watch this trick or whatever, and you go to playing and you're busy, you're playing for 10 or 15 minutes and you look up and you don't see them and you panic and you're like, they left, because you didn't feel the current pull you down, the coast. Well, that's what happens with marijuana. You look up, all of your friends have moved on. They're all doing these things and you're like, what the crap? They left me, right?
Right.
And it's because you don't feel it when it's happening to you.
You hear a lot of people say, it's natural. So how could that be bad for the body? But some of the reading I've done on it is it really does affect the anxiety. Like you take it to help with anxiety, but then it perpetuates the anxiety.
And when you look at all of the addictive substances, they all work exactly like that. There's a reason why someone is using it. It provides some kind of benefit for them. But whatever it's fixing for you, it causes it to be infinitely worse in the back end. So like with marijuana, a lot of times we'll use it because they say it helps their anxiety. But what's happening, like because of the neurochemicals and some other things, you have this rebound effect, which is making your anxiety worse. So like when I meet with someone and they say, well, it's the only thing that helps with my anxiety. And I'll say, well, how long have you been doing it? And then they'll tell me, I'll say, well, is your anxiety better or worse than it was when you started? So to help people to sort of see. Same thing as alcohol. People drink to like relax, unwind, just be present in the moment. And the rebound effect from that is to feel keyed up, anxious, sort of high-strung, irritable, discontent. Any substance you look at as stimulant, the rebound effect is, you take a stimulant to have all this energy and focus, and on the back end of it, you're in the bed for days. You get this opposite reaction. It's like a negative reinforcer. So really all of the substances work that same way. Pain, the withdrawal symptom of pain is pain pills. The withdrawal symptom is pain, right? You get the opposite of what you're intending.
What's something that if you're looking into your life and realizing, I think my partner or my family member has something going on,
that you try to, if you're going to try to get through to that person, you need to focus on building credit. I know your instinct is once you see it, it's like this alarm, it's going off in your head, and we want to run in, like I said, it's like this person running from a train, we just want to grab them. But it's really like the worst thing you can do. Like if you're trying to help an injured dog, right? You got to walk up slowly. You got to let them smell you. You're trying to help them, but they're going to bite you. That's what's going to happen here, right? Like you got to say, I'm safe, give it plenty of time. You really have to approach it that way if you're trying to get through to this person. And there are plenty of ways to get through this person, but that is the necessary way to do it. Otherwise, they're going to get panicked and they're going to push you away or worse.
If you're seeing drug use with your kids, the first thing you want to do is fix the problem, right? You want to help them. You're so terrified that they're going to hurt themselves. How do you work through that?
Yeah, when it's your kid, your alarms are mega loud, especially for moms. It's not always this way, but most of the time it's this way. There's always a good cop, bad cop parent.
Yeah.
Most of the time, mom is the bad cop and dad is the good cop when it comes to this issue. And my explanation for this is that as moms, we're wired in and we just know when they breathe different. We know when they're sick. We know when they're sad. We just do. We're supposed to. And so we know something's off and we can't ignore that as moms. And so we start trying to figure out what it is and snooping in their stuff, trying to come at it, right? Puts the mom in the villain role with the kid, right? And now we're in this power struggle. And then dad is over here watching it and he's just sick of you two arguing. And he realizes mom is coming in too strong. And the way he deals with that is to be like, boys will be boys. We did this when we were kids. Calm down. And the more he does that, the more her freak out is going to get worse, because he's like, you're not listening to me. And then before you know it, because, the good cop parent is trying to mediate between these two. Then he finds out something. Then he's keeping a secret because he knows. And you get this whole triangle thing going on. Man, what a mess. The first thing you have to do as a parent is you have to align with the other parent or whoever else is important in this equation. Because if you're not on the same page, then the kid, even if it's an adult kid, I'm going to say kid, your child, son or daughter, is going to exploit that difference and pit one against the other. And that'll keep the addiction going and going.
Do you see that a lot where they end up being in the altercation and then the child is sort of able to get out of the line of fire? Speaking of kids, how would you advise to have conversations about substances? Give them the information. Clearly, they're going to do what they're going to do, and you hope that it's landed. What is your recommendation of how to handle that conversation?
I want to start by saying, I don't know that there's a way to prevent it. There's nothing you can say or do that's 100%. I have an answer for you. Even if your kid ended up, it does not mean you're a bad parent. It does not mean you did anything wrong. I see a lot of people from some really good families. Okay. So it's not because you were a bad parent necessarily. So but as far as having the conversation, I think it's really important to be very truthful and objective with a kid because you don't want to try to do the scared straight stuff. If you do this drug, you're going to die, because they're going to see their friends do it and then that's not going to happen. And then they're going to try it and then that's not going to happen. And now you've ruined your credibility.
Right.
And so, I think you have to say, oh yeah, it's all great for this and this and this. And people love it because it does this and this and this, but eventually it does this. Right. And then they get reliant. I think it's not so much scaring someone about a substance because it's not the substance, it's addiction that you got to worry about because that's where you're going to get into trouble. Right. And so it's about helping them understand what that looks like and how that happened. And so I think it's about being honest and say, oh yeah, you probably will like it for a while. It's going to make you feel great instead of saying, immediately you're going to get arrested. You just don't want to come out with the scared straight stuff because Because as soon as they prove that wrong, which they will quite immediately, then, oh my God, Mom, whatever, you say that about everything. It's like you're disqualified completely. And nothing you have to say going forward counts because you're out.
A big word right now that I'm hearing everywhere and for the last couple of years is gaslighting. And I don't think people actually understand what it is. And so I'm very curious to hear what it is and how you know if it's being done to you.
I think it's just a confusion tactic, really. Like people talk about gaslighting mostly in the context of like narcissism. And so it's like if someone gaslights you, it's like, oh my God, they're a narcissist. An addict or an alcoholic will gaslight you all day. In fact, I bet every single one of us have gaslit someone like, no, that didn't happen. I didn't do that. Like it's I'm making you think
you're crazy.
That what you know is true is not true. Like you're crazy.
Right.
You know, you're making someone second guess themselves. It's a defensive stance, right? And it's not particular, only to a narcissist or only to someone who has addiction. It's just a panic. I'm caught, right? I'm saying whatever I got to say to get out of being cornered, essentially.
Right.
So is it a good thing to do? No. Is it as horrible and evil as people think? No. I mean, it's like you find your kid's stash and they're like, that was there the whole time. And it wasn't because you search the room every day or whatever.
Right.
It's like, please, I searched that 3 times yesterday. I know it wasn't there. Like, you're not saying that, but you're thinking. So that the problem with it is like when someone's gaslighting you and that person has an addiction, you get even more invested in proving it. Because 2 reasons. 1, you're trying to get them to acknowledge that there's a problem and do something about it. And 2, you're trying to be like, see, I'm not crazy. This is happening.
Right.
So you get on this crazy mission to find the evidence and you think, I can find the evidence and show them, then they'll have to admit it. And that won't work. Again, you're in the villain role, like big time.
Right.
And you're on this chase of trying to constantly catch them, right? Find the paraphernalia, catch them in the act, find their stash, all the stuff. When someone's gaslighting you, you feel compelled to prove that
yourself.
You're not crazy.
Yeah.
And then by doing that, you kind of act crazy, right? Because you become like the crazy wife or the crazy mom or whatever. And then like, this is going to be really bad because then this person is telling you that you're crazy. Now you're kind of acting crazy. And then they'll be looking at the people around and be like, see, I told y'all. See what telling dad, see, dad told you she's crazy. She's crazy. And telling the in-laws and everyone else. And so now everyone else thinks you're crazy. And that makes you feel more crazy, act more crazy. It's just a whole big mess.
Terrible cycle.
It is.
When you started practicing, what was the thing that you really loved about this career? Like, what has sort of sustained you in your journey?
Well, for me, and this isn't from like studying, because they don't really teach you anything about this in school. This is just all learned the hard way, right? The thing I love specifically about addiction is that of all the mental health things, this one is fixable. It's the most fixable. It has the clearest answer. And not only do people get better from it, but they become better people than they ever would have been without having it. The reason is because in order to beat an addiction, you have to develop these emotional self-awareness skills that regular humans don't have to have. Like you have to be very honest with yourself about your intentions. You develop humility stronger than most people have it. Honesty, like you just develop these emotional muscles that make you a better human being in the end when you come out of it. And it really is cool to watch someone go from just this low point to turn it around and just having the best life. It's pretty cool.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody really describe it that way, in such an optimistic way that there is a brighter place to go that isn't just about getting over the substance. What is your superpower?
I think I'm really good at engaging people in the process. Because like I said, people, I've had to learn to do that. Because people don't want to come see you when you have an addiction. There's kind of this like attitude of, if a person is reluctant or resistant for any reason, it's like, oh, you're not ready, or you haven't hit bottom, or come back when you've suffered enough. There's just this whole attitude. And that comes from the ego of the professional, feeling frustrated and feeling like if I can't get this person sober, it means I'm a bad professional. So what they do is they put that on the person. Well, you're just not ready. You just don't get it. Whatever. You're not willing. You're not humble. Whatever. And so they deal with this resistance by saying, basically, just go away and come back when you're ready.
You hear that a lot. If they're not ready for help, then it doesn't matter what you do. You won't be able to help them. right? So
not
then
true.
it's just wash your hands and wait to see what happens. But as
Yeah.
a parent or a friend or husband or wife, whatever, you can't just
That's
like
not
go,
acceptable answer,
no.
right? You're right on it, Deborah, because, you know, especially if it's your kid, you know, if
Yeah.
it's your spouse, it's hard. But
Yeah.
when it's your child, like, it's just not in you to just wash your hands over them. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just
I mean, that's not
terrible.
the job.
Right. Exactly. Not in your wiring.
Talking to a woman on the podcast a couple weeks ago about financial security.
Mhm.
And she was talking about that she was seeing a lot of divorce in the plus 50 age bracket, and that she was seeing a lot of that divorce was stemming from people being in relationship with narcissists, whether it be the male or the female. What is narcissism?
It's one of those buzzwords that I think is
Yeah.
and it's like if someone in your life's treating you in a way you don't like, they're a narcissist. In psych hospital for 10 years and saw all of it. I mean, like in the most acute setting that you can work in for 10 years. And I probably saw somebody diagnosable narcissist, I
Yep.
don't know, a handful of times, right?
Mm.
What you don't understand is when someone is in a defensive posture, they're going to act narcissistically. They're going to act,
Mm.
if they're an addict, they're going to look like a narcissist because they don't have empathy. They're self-involved because they're feeling this addiction. So it looks exactly like narcissism. In fact, they're kind of narcissistic when they have an addiction. The question is, the addiction out, would that still be there? Like whether they really are like narcissist personality. But when someone feels attacked, they bolster up, they get defensive, they don't want to hear you, they don't care about your point of view. They might even do hurtful things because they feel hurt. I'm not a narcissist expert, but kind of a defensiveness expert in some ways.
Yeah.
If you're only hearing one person's side of the story, the other person's always the villain.
Right.
And if you talk to that other person, they tell you a whole bunch of information you had no idea about. And I've learned that through all of my work with people that I don't even see people that have addictions in isolation anymore because I would never get the full story. And if I only saw the family, I would never get the full story. We all have our own narrative. And it's not even so much that we're lying, it's that we have our own point of view and our own blind spots. Let's say I see a teenager, they're going to come to my office and say, Amber, you don't understand my mom. I know she acts nice in public, but she's really two-faced and she's this. And she told me I was a worthless loser and I was going to end up homeless, right?
Right.
But if I looked into the context, if I talked to the mom is going to say, okay, I said something similar to that, but they've failed their class. You know, they're flunking out of high school in 9th grade. And I said, if you don't get your act together, you're going to end up on the street, you know, right? They don't tell you everything that led up to,
Right. They're building their
this little piece, right, out of context. And I don't care which side it is.
When you're treating somebody, you include the family so you get the whole picture.
Right, but not in the traditional way. Like, I don't put you in a room together because that's just awful for me.
Right.
I don't like it's awful. I hate it. I don't do that. So I sort of have this system where the family gets their own person.
Yeah.
And the person with the addiction gets their own person. We call it lawyering. It's not really lawyering, but it's kind of like you get an advocate. I'm always a defense attorney.
Right.
So I'm like, it's my job to get you out of this mess you're in. Let's get you out. And it's like, if I only hear the addict's perspective about all the crazy things the family member's doing.
Yeah.
If I go to my partner who's seen the family member, they'll be like, oh, well, did they tell you this and this and this? And I'll be like, oh, they didn't tell me that part. And same thing, I'll be like, well, your person did this and this and this. Did they tell you that? And they're like, oh, they didn't tell me that part. You know, it's like, and so I've kind of learned the hard way that if you don't get both perspectives, you're going to counsel somebody wrong, right? Because you're only hearing one side. You're going to be saying, oh, that guy's abusive. He's a narcissist. You got to get out of there. And you don't know that because you're not getting both sides. And you actually end up making people a lot worse because people tell you what they want to tell you to feel validated. They tell you the pieces of the story to get you to come up to the conclusion they want you to come up with. So you have to be very careful about deciding this other person that you don't know and you've not witnessed is definitely this thing.
I'm hearing that the blame game is very prevalent in this situation, right? And what I'm hearing from you is that you really give space for each person to be seen.
Yeah.
And not just seen through the lens of the other person. And
exactly.
That's very powerful. while I'm sure challenging to get there, what would you say to a mom that's feeling like they may have addiction issues in front of them? They don't 100% know, but they feel like it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
What can they do? Are there books that they can read? What can they do to educate themselves?
There are so many places to learn about addiction. You can watch YouTube videos. Of course, there are books. So understanding what addiction is, if your gut is telling you it's addiction, it probably is, but it doesn't always look like that worst case scenario. And that's where you doubt yourself, right? When they're still functioning, or maybe they're still making good grades at school, or whatever it is, and then you question yourself, or you think, well, they're teenagers and they just went through a breakup. I guess, they're all like that or whatever. It's just hard because you go back and forth in your own head about what it is. And so I think not just understanding addiction, but understanding what it looks like in some of the earlier stages so that you're aware of what's happening. Being aware of what's happening and knowing it's addiction and knowing what to do about it is two different things, right? Because it's like, oh, I know it is. You're going to know it before they know it probably. And then deciding, how do I approach this? Deep down inside of all the people I've seen, no matter how much big talk they have when they came in, reluctant, if someone has an addiction, there's a part of them that doesn't like something about it. Now, if you're their family member and you've been trying to get them to admit it, the last thing they're going to do is admit it to you. But if you can create that alliance, people will be a lot more vulnerable. Like if someone comes to my office and they say, I love to drink. I drink you under the table. I'm going to die with a glass of vodka in my hand. I call that
They're doubling down.
Right. I might say, is there anything about it you don't like? And immediately their brain is going to think about the things they don't like about it.
Yeah.
Right. Versus saying something like, well, your wife told me that you're drinking a bottle a day and that you got fired from your last job, right? I could come at it that way.
Right.
But that's not going to serve me. That's not going to get this person to recognize it. It's just going to make sure the person never comes back to my office again, right? So how do I ask the right questions and say the right thing that helps this person get honest with themselves? Because it's in there. Like maybe they don't call themselves an addict or an alcoholic, but there's something about it they don't like. Or they're like, well, I really do need to cut it back. Or I'm really ashamed of what I did last month, and I'm never going to let that happen again. There's these vulnerable pieces inside. And if you create the right scenario, those surface, right? And then you motivate someone to change. It has to come from them. So you pull it up from the inside of them instead of trying to push it in. Don't push information in. Don't send articles. Don't send, things about this is what's going on in your lungs and blah, blah, blah. Do not do that. Don't send treatment pamphlets.
Educate.
Do not do that, right? Everyone that's drinking knows it's not good for them. Everyone's smoking. It's like telling somebody that's overweight, you're like, do you know how many calories that has? I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, we all can count, okay?
Yeah.
That's not the issue, right?
This was years ago. There was a gentleman that worked on the show that was clearly drinking heavily, and nobody really knew what to do, so nobody did anything. I had just started at the company, so I brought it up to somebody. I think that this gentleman has a problem, and what do we do?
Yeah.
And the response was pretty much like, that's his decision. We can't get involved in that. And he ended up dying.
Wow.
And from alcoholism. It was so sad, but I didn't know what to do. He was clearly suffering, and there was no real resources of how to help. What can you do?
It's a tricky one. And the fact that you guys were noticing at work tells me he's probably getting near the end stages, right? Because work is usually the last place it's going to see alcoholism.
Yeah.
Because it means it's really creeping in, that your workmates are seeing it. And so, and I don't know that you need to do this, but if it's what you have to sort of build a relationship with that person before you can do anything. There's not a gentle enough way to approach that's not going to, even if you're in recovery yourself, a person might be even more defensive towards you and have their walls up. So you'd have to build a relationship with them first and get some dialogue going. And then eventually, as you're just talking about regular things, something's going to come up. But that's going to take a long time. And I'm not sure that every person in a work situation wants to get into that with someone. And I don't even know that I would advise you to. Like the things that I teach, I say all the time because I feel kind of guilty about them, because if you're dealing with an addict, they're probably mistreating you in some way, even if it's just neglect or whatever. And I'm over here telling you to be nicer to them, right? Which feels kind of wrong. And so what I say is, I'm going to tell you how to do it, but I'm not telling you should do it.
Right.
Because if you can, protect yourself and walk away, do it. I'm just saying, it's kind of like if I taught people how to build $1 million houses. I'm like, I can tell you how to do it, but I'm not telling you should do it. So
right.
It's not necessarily, you don't have to take it on as your mission to fix that. But sometimes you find yourself in a situation that you can't easily get out of. If that person had someone that they worked with, that they were close with and trusted, who had credibility with them, that person could say in a gentle way. Without that credibility, it's like you're just going to get you don't know me.
Give some tips about boundaries and how to create boundaries to protect yourself while you're moving through these life situations.
Yeah. I mean, I think boundaries is a big topic these days, especially in the world of addiction and recovery. I think most of the time people misunderstand what boundaries are. What people are saying, this is my boundary, that's my boundary, you're not following my boundary. Most of the time what they're doing is setting rules. Like when your kid brings home a bad grade and you take their Xbox and you say, that's your consequence. This is not a consequence, it's a punishment.
Right.
Right. And so we, cause it just sounds better, right? That's my boundary. You're not following my boundary. No one can break your boundary but you. Boundaries are rules for you. Boundaries are rules you set for you. Like, I'm not going to lose my crap and say a bunch of nasty things to this person. Or I'm not going to answer the phone after 5 o'clock because I know that they're just going to be drunk and it's going to be a 2-hour tangent that I don't want to hear. Right. You don't even necessarily have to tell another person what your boundaries are. It's what you decide are your rules for you to keep yourself safe, sane, healthy, happy, whatever, right? It's like you can build a fence around your own backyard and that's cool, but you can't build a fence around someone else's backyard. And most of the time what people are calling boundaries are rules and punishments that are not effective. And then you're like, they keep crossing my boundaries. I'm like, no, you can only cross your boundaries. You can say, don't call me after 5. That's a rule, right? Or you can say, I'm not answering the phone.
That's actually really helpful. What do you think the biggest myth about addiction is that you see?
I think the biggest myth is that addiction means powerlessness. Powerlessness for the person and for the family member. I disagree completely, right? I understand where that term, that concept comes from. It means I can't manage it, which I agree with that. But this idea of powerlessness, this idea that people don't get better, I'm like, please, I see people get better all the time. And they go on to live fabulous lives and they help 20 other people get there. I mean, it's not, don't listen to that negativity. You hear that negativity, it comes from people that have tried to help people that have addictions and it didn't work. So they tell you there's nothing you can do. It's because they didn't know what they were doing. They were responding out of instinct. And instincts will, serve you well in a lot of situations, but not in this situation.
What does protecting your peace mean to you?
To me, it means if you're dealing with someone who has an addiction, you don't let yourself get addicted to their addiction, right? It's like, don't let yourself obsess about it constantly.
Amber, thank you so much for being with me today. Before you go, I just want to say thank you for spending time with us. I hope today's episode reminded you to be a little kinder to yourself, to trust your story is still unfolding, and that there are so many possibilities ahead. If this conversation spoke to you, I'd love it if you would subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend who might need to hear it. And thank you so much for being here.